Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle McLean, your host for Tip Radio Top Industry Professionals, where we showcase prestigious professionals from around the globe sharing their stories of success and inspiration. And we are so excited to have with us today, returning to the show from Toronto, Canada. I really was so excited to be there at the summer soiree in Toronto, meeting up with all of you. And he was a keynote presenter. He's been honored member of IAOTP for many, many years now. He has been selected over the years as top philanthropist of the decade, humanitarian of the year, recipient of the International Hero for Education, Man of the Year, Hero of the Year, Visionary of the Year, and the list goes on and on. And this year, he'll be honored in Nashville at our gala event in December for his selection as Top Innovation Advisor of the Year Award, Top Inspirational Mentor of the Year, and Brain Health Advocate of the Decade. He's had over 2 decades of professional experience in higher education and has taught 45 different subjects at college and university as an associate adjunct professor at Renison University College, University of Waterloo, and professor at the University of Gulf Humber. So we welcome back to the show my dear, dear friend, Dr. Dan Andreae. Welcome.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much. And it was wonderful to see you in Toronto at the soiree. And you were a wonderful host too, as well, who introduced us as well. People love seeing you, and it's always such a pleasure. So you helped to make it a really memorable event, and the first one in Canada as well for IAOTP.
I was so excited to go back there. I've only been there once. The
Oh,
weather was spectacular. I mean, the soiree was amazing. So any members out there that want to come to our summer soiree,
yeah.
definitely come and join us. And you were very, very inspirational, Dan, as you always are. I mean, it just goes on and on, your accolades, and what you mean to us as members of IOTP. So it's
Thank you.
it's and also an amazing opportunity to meet all the other members, right? So
Absolutely. It's a two-way street. We network with each other, learn from each other, and everybody has a fascinating life, which they share.
that's so true. And talking about your significant life, and obviously you have a wonderful family life, but you have achieved so much in education, philanthropy, and those affected with neurodegenerative diseases, especially. Tell us a little bit about your work in that field, and was it always your dream to do that?
Well, actually, it really began when I serendipitously got the job as the first executive director of the Alzheimer's Society in Toronto. And at that point, many years ago now, it was really a question of raising it from just a volunteer organization into a professional organization. So there was so much to do. The horizon was really open. And so we created a counseling program, a resource center, support groups, got the philanthropy program off the ground, speakers program. We liaised with researchers as well, and really tried to raise awareness. That was so important because back then, Michelle, when I was actually considering the job, I was actually with another organization, and we had set up the National Eating Disorder Information Center at Toronto Hospital. And we also, in that capacity, organize these community evenings, at the main library in Toronto. It could be summer health and safety or diabetes, whatever. And a friend of mine, a mentor of mine, Eva Phillips, said, well, why don't you do it on Alzheimer's disease, an evening, partner with them. So I called them up, Michelle, and I said who we were, and can I speak to your director? And they said, we don't have a director. We're looking for one. And so again, if you look back in one's life, you can see the threads, that weave together in certain ways. I happen to have been fortunate enough to have gotten that job, and I was quite surprised because I was quite young, and the people who were afflicted mostly with Alzheimer's disease were people over 65, although families certainly, required so much support in that way. I went on to become the chair of their Patrons Council in Toronto, which is a group of people who can open doors, raise awareness, make connections, and that's so important too as well. And then beyond that, I became the patron of Brain Injury Canada. And brain injuries are a problem that it's severe. And people don't realize how many cases occur due to accidents, whether, God forbid, a car accident, falling off a ladder in the case of seniors, whether it's sports injuries. And so raising awareness around that and developing support programs was really important. And then I was involved, or am involved, with the Weizmann Institute of Science, and they generously created or named a neuroscience laboratory in my honor too as well. And working with them and Brain Canada right now to support scientists with grants, scientists who may not qualify with a hospital per se or an institute that has a checkbox of requirements, but they have wonderful ideas. So how do you find a way to allow them expression and a chance to do their research? Because you never know what you're going to find. So with that, along with my teaching career, where the brain entered in many capacities in my teaching, I've had a real interest along the way. And Michelle, although it's a new, well, although we made progress, it's really a new endeavor. We're in the infancy of understanding how this incredible organ works, because everything that we do, say, feel, imagine, plan for, fantasize about, all has activity in the brain that makes that possible. So it is absolutely key to really our existence in the world.
That is always so inspiring, because people forget how important, we always focus on our bodies and being sort of in perfect shape. And so that's always fascinated me, because the brain is what keeps you going. Obviously you need a good body and a healthy body, but the brain is what really keeps you vital for the rest of your life. So it must be
Absolutely.
fascinating doing all that research. What has been the most amazing sort of transformation for you in your life, coming across this business that you're in?
I think there are probably three areas, and one is the whole issue of brain plasticity. Because Michelle, if you and I had been in a biology class 20 years ago or a neuroscience class, we would have been told that the brain at a certain age is fixed. Nothing can change. It's absolutely the way it is. And now we know that's wrong. Turn it upside down, and we have something called brain plasticity, which means that we can actually change the wiring in our brain. Think of somebody who's had a stroke, for example, God forbid, and so their part of their body is paralyzed. We used to say, just accept that, work on the other parts of the body, the other arm. Now we say, work that arm, for example, and you can rewire the connections from the brain to the arm. It's phenomenal in that sense. People who are, let's say, visually impaired, they can learn to increase their plasticity with the rewiring of neurons, the brain cells, in their hearing capacity. A hearing problem, you can learn to increase your abilities visually. So there's so much that can be accomplished now. So that's one area. Brain plasticity, absolutely key, and we're making great progress even with people who just simply want to improve their lives,
Mm.
better memories, etc. And when you talk about the body, absolutely, the brain uses 20% of all the oxygen and sugar, glucose in the body to keep running. So basically, when we exercise, it creates certain chemicals in the brain that are beneficial in that way. We think of sleep, for example, which is so important. In fact, of all the things from exercise, nutrition, stress management, very important. Sleep is probably number one, because we revitalize our bodies, repair our ligaments and our nerves and our muscles and our tissues. On top of that, it also clears out all the toxic material that we accumulate during the day, and it gets sent from the brain into the lymphatic system. That's the lymphatic system here, and drains out like Drano, and so to speak. If we don't get enough sleep, we don't get rid of these toxic chemicals and material, and they can build up over time. Maybe cognitive impairment and beyond is partly responsible, because we don't get this taken care of. So there's that. And the other part, quickly, Michelle, would be the whole idea of the mind. Because when we focus on the brain, we focus on the physical brain. We can talk about the different parts, the different lobes, the different connections, and that's all well and good. But what about something called our minds? It doesn't get focused on as much, certainly in philosophy, maybe, or psychology. But because in the world of science, which has brought us so many advantages, if we can't see it, touch it, feel it, measure it, replicate it, and come up with a statistic to show it exists, for example, break a leg, we know what happens. Something happens in the mind. It's so hard to, to quantify or to really understand. And so the mind, of course, is so vital, and it reacts in combination with the brain. For 2,000 years, we wondered what the connection is between mind and brain. We still don't really know on that. But the fascinating thing too, as well, is that modern research in brain studies have shown actually something very interesting. Descartes, the old philosopher, he said, "I think, therefore I am." Well, in fact, the reality neuroscience is showing that isn't quite correct. "I feel, therefore I am." We feel first before we actually think. And so that's amazing. And our feelings are so important. And yet sometimes they don't get focused on to the degree they should because of how influential they are in our lives. That we get in touch with our feelings, we accept them, hopefully, we work them through, and that's the salvation to leading a better life along with the other factors as well. So I throw that in as something I find fascinating.
Well, I'm very fascinated by that comment as well. I think, therefore I am, because that must have come from a man, because a woman definitely feels, therefore I am. So that has been misunderstood for so many, centuries now.
Exactly. We all think of ourselves as rational beings. Without getting too off topic, it comes from the industrial age, industrial revolution, where we developed factories and we moved away from superstition, supposedly, and ideas, and tried to prove them through science. And as a result, we focused on our rationality and really cut ourselves off at the neck. And yet, that's really a false dichotomy. They really are so integrated. We have more connections from our heart to our brain than our brain to our heart. Uh,
I get goosebumps. I mean, that is really amazing to talk about, and for
yeah,
more people to really understand that is real.
yeah. It's being proven now. So there's much more to do, but we're opening up vistas and horizons that will benefit humanity. I'm certainly hoping.
Well, talking about humanity and your humanitarian work and your philanthropic career, tell us a
Yeah.
little bit more about how you have paid it forward over all these years. You are just well known for your philanthropy.
Well, thank you very much. And it gives me great satisfaction. People give for many reasons. Maybe they have a personal connection with a certain disease, or a family member does. So that's an incentive. Maybe they simply want to make a difference, or they want some recognition, or there's so many different reasons. But for me, over the years, it's really coalesced into looking at projects that involve health, medicine, education,
Mm.
and those are the three real areas. And based on two different things. I think one thing is projects that are transformational, that have a chance to be that, and where maybe others don't believe in them, and the other is need. So around need, it would be things like student scholarships that I love. I love giving at different places, and Humber College in Toronto being one. And it's a cliche, but it's really not. When you give these scholarships to students who are in need, it's like them winning the Oscar. It's changed their lives. It allows them to stay in school. Some of them were living in cars. It allowed, because they couldn't afford things, or food. It allows them to get up and gives them a hand up, so to speak. So it makes a huge personal difference one-on-one. Absolutely. Around healthcare, let me give you an example of one. It was several years ago, and I think not being an expert in a field can be a huge advantage. And so I heard about something called the Da Vinci robot. And again, not in my wheelhouse, but it really seemed to me as if it would be an important advance in surgery. And it was really like, in my mind, a no-brainer. And so I approached different doctors and medical professionals and others at the UHN. Now, the UHN is the University Health Network, and actually in Toronto, it's amazing. It comprises 5 different hospitals, with Toronto General being the main one. Newsweek named it the 3rd best in the world. And incredible, up from number 5 last year. So the Mayo, Cleveland, and Toronto. Anyway, that's beside the point. You've got very bright people there. And when I brought up the idea of investing money in robotics, I heard things like, there are other priorities in the hospital. It's going to cost too much. Don't bother. And the government's not paying for it anyway. So why rock the boat? And so I thought, no, nobody else came forward. And I said, no, this is really the future of surgery. I mean, it really has to be. And so I put up money as the first person to acquire the Da Vinci. Once I did that, others followed, and they bought the first Da Vinci, and my sister and I, who do philanthropy together, have just invested in the upgrade of that. And then we said, people have to be trained in this. I mean, how do you use this surgery, this technology to advance surgery? And so we created the Robotic Training Academy at the UHN, at the Michener Institute. So now it's set up so doctors can come in and they can learn how to use this. And they're not doing it yet, but remote surgery. So you could go to you could be in Toronto and do surgery in South Africa, with the technology that's available through this. One last anecdote. Don't want to talk too long about this, but there's a Dr. Yasafuku who does lung surgery. And so he talked to me recently, and he said, I had a woman who'd been to several surgeons in Toronto for a lung problem, and they all wanted to cut me from the back all the way to the front. But I heard you, Dr. Yasafuku, do robotic surgery, and it's very different. He operated on her successfully. What the advantages of doing this are is the incision is very small, so you're not cutting somebody open. It's less blood loss for sure, much less risk of infection, less recidivism, meaning coming back to the hospital. You're out the next day, and post-operative care is easier. And so it's things like that that give me satisfaction, where you're creating a new world. You're contributing in a small part to a new world that's going to benefit people.
I mean, that's just fascinating. And it is amazing how technology has just moved so fast, so quickly. And great to know that a person like you is at the helm, because, there's a lot the world still needs to learn about, and still needs to come to grips with, especially with technology. So that's amazing.
Yeah, anything that can be a start from a point of a possibility, for example. Another thing I did, not related to technology, but down in Windsor, Ontario, which is a city across from Detroit. Okay, and so I've done some work there. I know the people at Assumption University, and I said, why don't we start, or you start with my help, a group to bring different religions together, okay, for discussion. And so it's up and running now. And so when I was asked, why are you doing this? I mean, I'm not sure people are going to buy into this. And I said, not try guarantees only one result, and that's failure. So
Mm.
let's try. There's a risk in everything. And so I'm delighted that into the second year, they've had some forums and groups that have gotten together. They may not agree, but really, we have much more in common, as we know, at a human level, than the differences that divide us.
Yeah, very profound indeed. I mean, no wonder throughout your illustrious career, you have been on the international platform, you have been on the cover of magazines, on television shows, won numerous awards, like with IAOTP, I mean, numerous awards. What would you say, though, is your greatest accomplishment, something that you're the most proud of with all of that you've achieved?
Oh boy, that's a hard one. Let me just quickly look at my career, and there are different things. Like we started up the NEDIC program, the eating disorder program, at the hospital, which is now celebrating its 40th birthday, still going and meeting a huge need across Canada for information support for people, women, but men too, suffering from anorexia, bulimia, other eating disorders. So that was a great achievement in my mind. And then becoming the first executive director of the Alzheimer's Society was a real high, in terms of the people I met, what we were able to do in terms of reaching out to people. And that again was a great period of life. And then I was president of the Social Workers of Ontario, and believe it or not, Ontario it's a big province. I mean, maybe the equivalent of certainly California, New York in our country. It didn't have any regulation or standards for care. You could be a marriage counselor, hang up a shingle and say, I'm doing that, but you need a license to cut hair. And so I, in my naivete, took a 6-month leave of absence from the Alzheimer's Society to lead this campaign. Well, long story short, it took 10 years. And we finally won. We finally got it through 7 different ministers and the way our government's structured, 3 different governments, many valleys for sure, and some peaks. But that again, by building coalitions, by doing public education, working with government, working with the media, being as strategic as possible. The government had thought social work is not really an important profession. I say this in all due deference, but it's a female dominated profession, as our right-wing government, was pointing out, and all you want is more money. But the bottom line is, by not being a profession, social workers left out of any key pieces of legislation that would reflect patient care and
Mhm.
also public protection. So that was a great period too. And then after that, teaching for 25 years, almost, okay. So what's the most, I would say this, those are great projects, but that's not what really touches the heart. And what really does it for me is on an individual level. And I'm thinking of with students, and I mean, creating a safe classroom, and then helping them if they came to me, and listening to them and giving them some support. Students would come and say, "Oh, I'm in the wrong program, Dan, or Dr. Dan, or sir, or whatever, and my life's over. Okay, I made the wrong choice." To realize that finding what you don't like is just as important as finding out what you do like. And so students, because of classes, have changed careers. And I've heard about that too as well from them. So thank you very much. So it's the thing that we all need, and that's that human connection, being listened to. And there aren't enough opportunities in the world to really be listened to, taken seriously, and having their fears justified, which are very normal, or their hopes, their hopes encouraged. And so that's certainly big. And then with the robot, during COVID actually, and all of a sudden I get an email from a woman, and she said, "I saw your name up there in the surgery department." And she said, "My husband is in there being operated on with a Da Vinci robot. And I know the advantages of that. And I just want to thank you so much, for making my husband's care, more efficient, better, with a very positive outcome likely." And so those are small things, Michelle, but they're not small. So I would say really it's those moments of really making a difference in somebody's life. Doesn't need to be huge, far from it, but it can be on an individual basis. Because I was helped earlier on too in my life, and I know how important that was to me, and I'm no different than anybody else. you
So
know.
what you would say, in what I just heard was, because my next question was going to be, what advice would you give to anybody wanting to go into your career line? And I heard you say to them, it's as important to know what you don't want to do as you love to do what you do. So what advice would you give to somebody?
Oh, good question. I would say choose an area that really interests you, that you feel, passionate about, that you want to learn about, because life's all about lifelong learning. Things that we learn or I taught now are out of either out of fashion or they've been disproved, even in a short period of time. So that's one thing. Choose something that you really like, but also something that is consistent with your personality.
Mm.
Just by total coincidence, I had dinner last night with an acquaintance of mine, and this person's in business, and this person was saying, um, I'm smart, and no doubt about it, but I just don't feel that this is my field. It's there's not enough humanness in it. I mean, I'm good in business, but I can't see myself doing this 20 years from now. And so we talked it further. Anyway, this person is going to switch and become a lawyer, but wants to help people who are underprivileged. And so again, talking to people and finding out and exploring and doing research is important. Finding a mentor is really, really key. I did that. A woman called Eva Phillip was very helpful, years ago when I was struggling. And yeah, and networking and looking for that support and recognizing in any career there are going to be challenges, rewards, but also challenges. And some people want to go into social work maybe because they see themselves making massive changes in the world. God bless them. Harder to do that than they might envisage. So that's another thing. The last thing I'd say is to recognize that you're getting your foot in the door, and life is a journey with many, many pathways. You start out here, you may stay there 40 years from now, but you may not. Other opportunities may come up. You may evolve in different ways due to circumstances, people you meet, things that are just simply not known now. So keep an open mind in that way, and try to know your values, as much as possible, so that you can do things that are consistent with things that allow you to sleep at night.
That's wonderful advice. Well, Dr. Dan Andreae, I would love to spend all day with you. I could spend just, months and months with you. Maybe I should come to Toronto and have a good sit down. I'd love to learn more. How do our members and anybody else out there get hold of you?
Sure. Well, best at this point, through email, and that is Dan dot Andre, Andreae at Simpatico, Sympatico.ca. And I'd be happy to hear from anybody and any ideas or advice, whatever they'd like. I'd be happy to reach out back to them. It'd be a pleasure and an honor as
Well,
well.
I'm sure you're going to get a wild response, as you
Nice
always.
talking to you. It's wonderful, and I really commend all the work that you do. You are, Michelle, and I have goosebumps. You are an inspiration for all you do for humanity.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, and more to come. But it is wonderful what you've accomplished and received credit for, and deservedly so.
Thank you. Well, it's wonderful to be in this family group, all the members of IAOTP. So I'm eternally grateful and eternally grateful for your time today.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
so much. And we'll chat very, very soon, I'm sure.
I hope so. Okay, bye, Michelle. Good day. Bye.
Bye.